So we have quite the bit to talk about, don't we? This was an absolutely brilliant chapter, filled with emotions, super cathartic, and honestly shocking, surprising. I can't believe the ending of this chapter, which I'm going to save to the end of the video because there's a lot of discussions, a lot of theories, a lot of what about this, what about that. I'll save that for the end, right? I want to start off with the Asa and Yuko conversation because I was very unsure on how this would go. Could have went a multitude of different ways. After everything that we've experienced with Yuko as a character, I feel like this has come full circle so incredibly well. But just for a second, think about how Yuko was introduced. So much mystery surrounding her, but so much kindness. She was doing all of these things for Asa, helping her, becoming her friend, and they really connected and shared a bond rapidly. It was a very nice thing to see, especially because of Asa's history, the fact that she was being bullied and she was going through her own hardship. So having a friend that meant the best for her, that wanted to see her happy and thriving, was lovely. So us as readers, we appreciated that. We enjoyed Yuko, we loved her for doing that, but then you see it twist and turn and become super disgusting and methodical and warped in its entirety, which leads us to the situation that we're in now. And I love the mental gymnastics for it, because you love Yuko, you dislike her, you're trying to understand her, you know she's trying to do well but has misplaced intentions, and honestly the feeling towards her is just so up and down and all over the place. And I love how Fujimoto is able to handle that, to craft it and to wield it through the story. Surprisingly, this is a pretty difficult thing to do, to make it feel so naturally progressive. Having things jump back and forth in such massive directions can feel pretty jarring sometimes. Yet when it came to Yuko, when it came to Asa being like this anchor for her, it never felt out of place. It felt welcomed, it felt appreciated, and it felt scary. I'm sure a lot of you are upset with this situation, with the conclusion of Yuko as a character, but this conversation really drives that point home. It's surprisingly filled with so much self-awareness, something that she didn't have prior. After all the pain that she's caused, after all the difficulties that's been faced, she understands where she's gone wrong. I'm surprised that she could even self-recognize this, so much so that she's scared that her own thoughts aren't even her own. That's a difficult thing to do, and I think the point of this is for you to not only fully understand Yuko now, but also partially forgive her. Think of us as being in Asa's shoes, coming to understand Yuko with all of these twists and turns included, with how she's talking about herself and where she went wrong. You can't help but feel sorry. You can't help but want to try and help her, or want to try and save her, or even forgive her. And she knows that she doesn't deserve it, which is why this whole conversation is connected to the idea of her leaving and potentially being turned back human or killed as a devil in the process. She also mentions that she has a relative that's like a devil hunter, which makes me believe that she is quite literally connected to the family of the Stone Devil in part 1. They look identical. I don't know if they're cousins or close-knitted family members, but I mentioned this right at the beginning of the story when she was first introduced. But the conversation between these two, I love. It's not super crazy, it's not super over the top. Asa's not trying to force some type of perspective, she's just letting Yuko talk. I think the most special moment for me within this conversation is 2 different points. The first one is when Yuko is telling Asa her actual intentions, why she done the things that she'd done. It wasn't as simplistic as this or that, it was a combination of different things. And in my opinion, she kind of pulls this veil over the true reality of everything and tries to hide it all in with one another. See, Asa prompts this by saying that you made that contract with the Justice Devil to save me, I'm sorry. But then Yuko responds with, no, that's not the truth. She just wanted to be like Chainsaw Man. We had that idea for a little bit, but Yuko frames it as that being the only truth. Right after that, however, she lynches back to something being more personal and saying that if she were to help people, that if she was as popular as Chainsaw Man, everybody would love her. And saying that she'd done it for Asa is an excuse. I think that's half true. Just feeling at how Yuko talks within this conversation, I don't think she's going to lay out everything in its entirety. She kind of does, but she also tiptoes around these very personal, emotional ideas that feel rather lingering, right? She obviously doesn't want to hurt Asa as well. So it's this balancing act of telling her all of these personal things, but not having them be too personal so it affects Asa when she's gone, when she disappears. This moment really humanizes Yuko, and it's hard to think that she believes this situation to be this way only for this said reason. I don't think this is the case. Kind of more so to direct things inwards to herself, saying that she was friendless and that she only helped Asa because she wanted a friend. Yet I think there is ulterior kind of meanings within those words. And like I said, she's tiptoeing around things to not hurt Asa more than what she already has. Their friendship was easily genuine. If it wasn't, Yuko wouldn't be here right now. The second moment that I loved, because I did have another one, was Asa giving Yuko her shoes. Pretty much the exact same situation situation as it was prior when it came to the bullying situation. This is a great way to bring things full circle. It's a beautiful send-off for their friendship, and they kind of just laugh about it. Even though Yuko says that she doesn't need it, it turns into a laughing fit, and it's again cathartic. It's a super emotional and grounded moment between them, which I love. It feels very compassionate, very genuine, and even though it's riddled with this aura surrounding it that just feels off, which Yuko even mentions that she feels like the worst because they're laughing about this situation after everything that's just happened. It still lingers for the remaining of the chapter, and even actually sparks a bit of hope that she would actually return in the future. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. As we get to the ending of the chapter, we see a harsh reality. Before we get there, however, as we see Yuko kind of traversing over the buildings, we get a picture of everyone sleeping. Denji, Naruto and the dogs, you even have a headshot panel of Yuko, Asa, and then for whatever odd reason, and I want to bring this up, the freckled girl from the school. Now, a portion of you told me there's no way that this is the same girl as the horseman that rocked up in the chapter prior to it, right? What is the reason for showing this freckled girl? Why is she so important? Why is she even here? It just feels so out of place. I still think this is Famine. I think this is the human version of Famine, very similar to how Asa and Yoru operate, and even though they kind of look the same, kind of don't look the same, I think there is a genuine chance that it could be played into. Why else would you randomly show this freckled woman? Because she's Asa's bully? Potentially yes, but it still feels oddly out of place if it was only for that reason. So why not double down on that reason and saying that Asa's original bully is now actually the carrier for the Famine Horseman or the Death Horseman or whatever horseman you think it is. I digress. Those 4 panels are meant to set up the final page, and it is entirely brutal. So the headshot that we actually get of Yuko is because she has been killed, literally. Her head is, let's say, separated from everything else, and she's being held up by an individual that's off screen, but the shadow of that person seems to be Chainsaw Man, and Yuko even says Chainsaw Man, question mark. Now that ends off the chapter, but here we have a very massive conversation. So many theories, so many ideas. Is this Denji? No, I don't think this is him in the slightest. I think the 4 panels that we got prior with everyone sleeping is for that reason. It's meant to throw you off quite heavily. Nor does this really line up to how Denji operates. Well, where do we start? This one's difficult to talk about because there's really nothing to go off. You're kind of just creating baseless theories to hopefully fill some type of void until we get some sort of information. Everything that I usually talk about when it comes to theory crafting, I want to be able to connect it in some way to the story. This one's hard to do because we only have the shadow of an individual and there's nothing else to really go off. So you have to kind of fill the blanks in as much as possible in hopes to connect it logically. Because we could say this is the Death Horseman and it could still just be as believable as the other ones, even though there's clearly a chainsaw in the shadows. The first thing that I feel a lot of people will think of is Naruto. Is she controlling Denji subconsciously to do something like this? It's a possibility. I don't know why Naruto would do it. I don't know why Denji would see himself below Naruto, which is one of the inhibitors to make that be possible. And I don't think Naruto could really learn that quickly just based off where she came from and how she acted at the end of Chainsaw Man Part 1. Is it a possibility? Yes. Would it be weirdly kind of thrown in there at the moment? Definitely. But there's an endless amount of ways that it could be played into. The other one, is this the Blood Devil? There's a pretty big emphasis on blood. They can mimic tools and weaponry. Could it work? Yes, I think this could work. Why would this individual mimic Chainsaw Man specifically? I don't know. Maybe they have a grudge against them. Maybe they want to bring more fear towards them. Maybe they have a respect for them. Maybe this is the Blood Devil that Denji has to eventually look for to hopefully bring power back, which we know isn't necessarily that easy because the consciousness or the memories of the individuals don't actually transfer over to new devils. But it would make for an interesting altercation if Denji found someone that looks very similar to himself and it turns out it's actually the Blood Devil. Now, one that I personally really like, a copycat killer. The only reason I feel like I like this is because I think Fujimoto would do it justice. He's writing part 2 very similar to a movie structure. It's not identical, right? But with how slow and paced out everything feels, especially this chapter and how it ends, it reminds me of a plot twist within a movie. Right at the end, you would get something like this and you would get an end credit scene. I don't know why it feels that way, but he does it quite often with a lot of things within the story. A copycat killer I think would work really nice. Someone posing as Chainsaw Man to bring a negative attention to them. Obviously, if Denji is going around trying to reveal himself and trying to be the hero, copycat killer doing the negative side of things would be pretty brutal, going around slaughtering innocent people and devils alike. So you have this kind of duality problem going on once again, even though that kind of already exists for Chainsaw Man. I think it would make for or a good cat and mouse game, and it would kind of dive back into Denji trying to reveal himself even more to prove that he's not this individual, that he's not the one doing these things. Now there's another idea that this could be the new fear that humans have towards Chainsaw Man, what they believe that Chainsaw Man actually is. As much as I like this idea, I think it's very much hard to incorporate into the story at this moment. It could work within the future given more steps towards it, but it's a very kind of oddly placed thing currently. There's just not enough information or knowledge for us to go on for it to work that way. But I do think it's interesting. I think the last one to mention is that this could genuinely just be the original Chainsaw Man, or on the offhand to add to it a version of Pochita. Now personally, I don't think this is a version of Pochita. I don't think this is like a clone or a replicant or something that's related to Pochita, but this genuinely just could be the original Chainsaw Man devil. How would this work? I think this would be a cool way narratively to go back into the origins of Pochita and why he has the power to erase people from existence, but is also a little dog with a chainsaw coming out of his head. I've already made a full video, theory, yada yada, talking about what I believe Pochita actually is, and that is extinction. A lot of people argued, well, maybe his existence. It's kind of an umbrella term. Extinction encompasses a lot of different things. That's why I believe Pochita to be a primordial fear, because the only reasons devil would fear their own death is not because they're going to die. It's not the horseman that would be death, but it would be the primordial fear that erases them entirely. Devils don't really die like that. They kind of just get reborn over and over again. But if you become extinct, if you are erased from history, you are a primordial fear. Everything and everyone subconsciously, not consciously, subconsciously fears you. Now, if everyone potentially fears you, and some may even worship you, and the four horsemen are after you because they don't want to be wiped from existence, what better way to hide from all of them than to erase the identity of a lesser devil and hide within them? Now, for me, that does not sound impossible. There's probably semantics in there on how that would actually work, like partially erasing the Chainsaw Devil and Pochita taking it over and rewriting it so he is now the Chainsaw Devil, but I continue to think it's a great way to hide. And the main reason why none of the four horsemen or even other devils could find where Pochita was. So why is potentially the original Chainsaw Man devil here now? Maybe he's respawned. Maybe he's upset that his legacy has now become so warped and tarnished by an individual that isn't even himself. And I guess to kind of clean up the dots, we haven't really seen a super successful erase or extinction from Pochita as of yet. He tried to do it with Makima. It didn't really work. Now, there's a lot of weird reasons for Makima with the amount of contracts and how powerful she was, but something that's always interested me is how Yoru talks about the Nuke Devil, and how if Pochita spits up the Nuke Devil, they'll no longer be extinct, potentially. Now, that just could be Yoru having copium, but I like the idea of that being true. There may be a chance when Pochita merged with Denji, the erasing or extinction of the original Chainsaw Devil that Pochita took over unraveled itself. It was spat back up, theoretically. So you would have two Chainsaw Man devils running around. One that is only the Chainsaw Man, and the other that is Denji with Pochita and extinction or whatever massive power thing that he actually is. There is a ton of ideas. This could be Famine growing an identical copy of Chainsaw Man because they're obsessed with him as well. Who knows? I don't know. I've sat here and talked about too many things. I want to hear your thoughts. It was a brilliant chapter. I really loved it. The ending was just brutal in every single regard, but I'm excited to see where we go from here. It's going to get very, very interesting. Let me know your thoughts below right now. Thank you.